Welcome back to another episode of Hobby Time in the Murder Basement, where today I get to sit down and talk with Carmichael from Fables of Refuge YouTube and Twitch stream. Does live D&D stuff and also talks about theorycraft of running D&D games. Carmichael's a cool dude, comes from the Corridor Digital family, started off working there on the Corridor crew, grew them to a huge size and broke out to do his own thing. Super cool dude. We get way deep in the weeds on this, so if you are a theorycraft nut, you're going to have a great time. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for being here.
Still in the same game sometimes. And as a kid, I realized I got headaches from the constant hard shift from looking here to there to here to there.
Sure.
And it didn't go away when I started using cameras as a career.
It's weird how that turns out, right?
Yeah. So, and it took me like 4, maybe 5 years to find these glasses.
And are they
I
just
wanted
like slight magnifiers, or do they just like to stop with like the blue fatigue, or what is it?
It has a little bit of the blue, but I wanted like no frame, perfect circular Steve Jobs glasses, but I didn't want to spend $100 on them.
How fucked up is it that something that you actually need, you don't want to spend more than $100 on? You're just like, oh man, I'm using these all day long. It's like more important than shoes, but yet $100.
Yeah. $100 is God.
But this dragon statue is like $300, and they only made 250 of them, and I need that shit.
Dude, my dragon's disappointed in me. Like, it's been taking too long to get my red dragon where I want it.
And it's good.
Still like, yeah, it does until you look up close on the back. You can see like what is it called? The green stuff is like looks like you got attacked by some black pudding.
I mean, so like when it comes down to doing like big miniatures, like it's one of those things that I forgot to shut off my notifications here. Whoopsie doodle.
Let me
Gotta
make
go
sure
to
all my
streamer mode. Enable streamer mode. Here you go.
I dare you to go the hard route and hard turn off your phone.
I use the phone as a stopwatch to try to keep track of the topics that we talk about. I'm fucking garbage at it. I'm garbage at it.
It's all good. I'm still learning how to control pacing when DMing. We've been in this scene for an hour? Ooh, let's get moving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, DMing is such a hard thing to keep pace, and especially if you're having a good time, it's really hard to tell if your gamers are having a good time.
Yeah, it's that whole thing like in elementary or it's just like school sports, right? When you're sitting on the sideline, you're looking at that clock, waiting for that 2-minute mark, but that 2 minutes feels like it's an hour. But if you're on the field, those 2 minutes feel like 10 seconds.
Right. Well, I don't know. When I was young, sports and me were like, hey, Heath, go out into the outfield because no one's going to hit it to you, because I was too much of a daydreamer. And like I would like look at the clock and then I'd be like, oh, I'm hypnotized by the clock. And I would be fighting demons, and like suddenly I'm not wearing my baseball mitt anymore and I'm sitting in the grass like looking at flowers. And it's just like
yeah, you're literally doing that to everyone else. This is you.
Yep. Oh,
what is he doing out there?
Yeah. Oh, I found a four-leaf clover. This is fantastic. You guys don't even know. This will win us the game.
I have a mixed relationship with sports.
I think most nerds do. Although with things like Dungeons and Dragons becoming so culturally relevant now, I think that is starting to change dramatically. And I'm hearing people talk about, local sports team doing said sports a lot more in the hobby, which is cool. Like, I
Mhm.
actually want those people here, but it does make me feel bad that I have no idea what they're talking about whatsoever.
I mean, if it's I with baseball, I can keep up with probably the top 3 most known things. Football, I understand the concept of actually, I could for most sports, I could keep up with how does one team win over the other,
Sure.
right? And that's just good enough for me to cheer for the other team.
Be like, I'm rooting for the underdog here.
Damn it, Carmichael! That's not who's supposed to win. I mean, they're winning.
But they came out and they played a good game. I like so here in St. Louis, we have the St. Louis Blues, who won Stanley Cup a couple years back. The I got to go to a game. One of my friends is part owners of the Blues, so every once in a while, like they're like, "Hey, you want to go see ringside hockey game?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" Like I literally don't care who's playing. You get free hot dogs, and so I'm just gonna show up and get free hot dogs and watch people
Right?
play a sport that I think is probably physically more demanding than any other sport I've ever watched. And Chicago Blackhawks were
Hockey's
there.
rough.
Right. Well, and like the Chicago Blackhawks are a hell of a team. They are Stanley Cup winners. There is a huge rivalry between the Blues and the Blackhawks. And having sitting there watching, I'm like, these teams are doing a hell of a sports game right now. And they're like, you shouldn't be rooting for the other team. I was like, did you see that play? That was fantastic, though.
Man, they're doing a great job. Which side are you on?
Right. And I'm sitting there
I'm on
with
my
the
side,
owners of the
buddy.
team, like, and they are just pissed off. I'm like, this game was fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Ever since COVID, I've been touching my nose more.
do you
Or
notice
at least
this? Just face
being
touching in general?
aware. Just being aware of it. You're like, whoops.
Well, I got a flu shot a couple weeks back, and every time I get a flu shot, I always have like cold symptoms afterwards. It's just something that happens, and
Mhm.
and it has messed me up pretty bad. As like the mold and stuff is bad here right now because it goes hot, cold, and so now I have developed a slight cough, and the cough every time like, oh, I'm like, oh no.
Worst for me is so through lockdown, I've been making most of my income through editing,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't been able to get up, move around. I love just filming. Like right before lockdown, I was in Guatemala for a week, hiking through the mountains and filming the Black Rifle guys, exploring local farmers and making better connections and more ethical business decisions to help farmers.
Yeah.
And that sounded like an ad. Um, uh, but uh, I love being able to move around. So after like 7 months of just sitting at desks and typing, now that I'm actually starting to get up and film things again, like the wind catches up to me faster than it should. I'm like, oh god, oh
Like,
no.
dude, I have put on, an easy 20 pounds. Like this shirt, I was like, at the beginning of quarantine, was like, nice slim fitting graphic tee with like a V-neck, and it looked great on me. Now I'm just kind of like, ooh boy, I need to move more. Like now.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's crazy when you're told to not do anything. That's crazy. It's so opposite of how anyone in America has been raised.
Yeah. Well, and like we are a nation of doers, even if everybody isn't doing maybe exactly what they should to achieve their dreams and or goals. They're doing something constantly. And whether that is
Mhm.
just like blind consumerism or like super hobbies or workaholics. Like we don't stop. We are addicted to the chaos of everyday life here. You just have to latch
Yeah.
in. You don't get the break. And once you become self-employed and you are in that gig economy, it is like ramped up even more. It's so hard to turn that off.
All right. Have we started?
Yeah. Yeah. uh, I'll give you a proper introduction because, again, I like to branch the show out into people that are not typically mini painters, even though that's like where I started with the show. I think that it makes sense as the hobby is so much more consuming than just putting paint on plastic models. It is also, you know, gaming and writing and content creation and really specifically through quarantine, anyone who's making content to entertain other people on a medium like YouTube is, I think, one of like the best altruistic things that you can do. So Carmichael, thank you so much for joining us in the murder basement.
Hey. I
Why
don't
don't
have
you
a
give like
basement.
a
I'm in
brief
California.
introduction of everything that you've done? Because I'm at the point where you're actually so new to me as like a mutual friend of ours. One Trent said I had to talk to you, and if I
Tr-
didn't, he was going
Trent is
to
too nice.
super nice. That messed up nice. But he was
He
like,
wouldn't survive Los Angeles or New York. That's how nice he is.
"You're probably right." Or he would like accidentally start some sort of cult, and it would be like this
And
thing.
radically change it.
Yeah, yeah. And he wouldn't mean to do it. It would just happen.
Yeah.
So why don't you give like a brief introduction of who you are, where you came from, and how you've made it to this point today. I know that's a huge question, but like you have a crazy story that I love.
Am I flickering on your end?
You are flickering. I have no idea if it's recording it or
I
not.
feel like that's I feel like oh, it's probably totally recording it. I feel like it's a hardware thing. So I'm just trying to troubleshoot that
Oh.
as my brain would like to do as a filmmaker. um Sorry for anyone watching who has to deal with the flickering.
Yeah.
Um so my story, born in Germany.
I did not expect it to start there, but let's. I'm with it. I'm here. Let's do it.
uh so I grew up with fantasy storytelling, fantasy video games, Renaissance Festival. I think the Renaissance Festival was the biggest one. I eventually worked there for like a couple years.
Nice.
Um, I got into the habit of playing Monster Hunter before school, so I could go to school confident that I've killed a dragon for the day.
How did you go to school? Like anytime I start a Monster Hunter thing, I'm like, oh shit, 4 hours just disappeared.
I had to calculate. I had to start timing what's the average amount of time that I have it takes for me to go onto a mission, find a dragon, kill it, get back and save. And then I had to wake up early enough to be able to do that. No one at once I started doing that, I had so much confidence in high school.
I did the same thing. I think I'm a little older than you, and Dragon Ball Z used to come on the Fox News affiliate, the Fox 49, I think, out west, and they would play Dragon Ball Z at like 6 in the morning. So I'd wake up at 5:30 to watch Harry and the Hendersons, the TV show, and then Dragon Ball Z afterwards. And then I go to school on Friday like strung out and be like, "Did you see what Piccolo did?" And we'd like it was like we talked our stories at lunch.
So I grew up in Minnesota, and I Toonami was the shit.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I wish I had that. That would have been so awesome.
Toonami was like the first version of like uh at least for kids, it was a solid introduction to host. Like Tom being a host and curating content for you. There's something similar to like everyone's attachment to Toonami is actually attachment to Tom,
Sure.
and it feels like a YouTube channel kind of thing. Like Toonami, if Toonami was a YouTube channel and there was a VFX artist always making Tom be the host, everyone would watch that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Get out of here. I don't know what's wrong with her. I'm so sorry.
Dude, it's all right. I'll just put like a seizure warning before it and be like, if flickering green lights gives you seizures, you'll have a seizure during this.
I almost thought that fixed it. Um, this is me, guys. uh, so yeah, I grew up like that, and let's see, when did it like leave me? I think when I decided to go into filmmaking, that's where I kind of pushed a lot of stuff away from me because it was a slow progression of realisticness versus dream that like outpaced what I wanted.
Sure.
And slowly, like all my childhood love for fantasy started getting pushed to the side and stuff like that. Um, and I just went deep dive into filmmaking, and that was most of my adult life. Then,
Did you do filmmaking through high school? Were you one of those kids who was like way ahead of the curve, or did you wait until you were like properly trained in college?
well, I no, I started when I was a kid. I picked up my dad's camera, tried some stuff, nothing great, and then walked away from it, came back to it, walked away from it, kind of stuff. Like I was just fascinated with like how to capture. I tried to make when Red versus Blue first came out. Uh,
Yeah,
I
red
tried
versus
to
blue.
figure out how they did it.
Yeah.
I tried to figure it out. Because my dad was overseas and he sent me the bootleg version on DVD.
Nice.
And I was like, "How do you do this?" So I pointed my mom's camera at the TV and I tried figuring it out with Halo. Um, and I started making like I would come into school early, skip lunch, stay late till my mom got off work to pick me up in the computer lab trying to figure this stuff out.
Oh wow.
Um, and it yeah, I there's a mechanical thing in my brain where it's like if I don't understand how something works, I need to figure out how to make that work either the right way or whatever way possible that works for me.
Sure.
It's just I need to understand the mechanics and then I'm creatively free to move on with my life.
Yeah. No, dude, I totally get it. Like I'm a fixer at the core, and if you give me a problem, I want to know the solution. And so like it has led me down very crazy hobbies, especially in the last like 10 years. It's been nuts.
And I don't know I can't remember if D&D was ever mentioned to me as a child. Um I guess it just flew right by my radar. But, like I grew up with Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh. I even got the Yu-Gi-Oh arm disc thing.
Hell yeah.
Uh, I was having a blast as a kid. Um, then deep into filmmaking, I was working at Corridor Digital, and uh, they make YouTube videos like cinematic comedy stuff, and I helped run and kind of start their vlog BTS channel from 200,000 subs, and I left when it was at like 1.8 million, and
Yeah.
now it's at 3.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Uh, and I fell in love with the idea of capture over create content because the writing process of making content sometimes for me bogs down the ability to just I want to tell a story.
Sure.
And it's like you have characters in front of you all the time. You just gotta know what their plot is. Like the events of your life today,
Right. Sure. Sure.
and it just takes craft and ambition to make it interesting.
So, how did you get linked up with the Corridor Digital people? And like, was YouTube your like goal? Because like to me, YouTube, I was too old for YouTube to make any sort of sense as like a financial way to like promote any of my artistic projects, promote any of my bands. Like it never made any sense as like a tool to me. And now I'm like, I feel like I'm 10 years too late. I should have started 10 years ago, like when everybody it was still the Wild West. And now there's like this weird formula and stuff that you have to kind of adhere to. Like, was YouTube
Yeah,
a focus for you, or did you just kind of like say yes to the direction and wherever it took you, you ran after?
a little bit of both.
Okay.
Um, I while in film school, because I did go to film school, I went to Fort Lauderdale Art Institute for a year and then ditched it, went to Art Institute in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
and then I wanted to like do the New York Film Academy. And because they had the red came out, I was like, I want to touch it.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend money to do it. I'll go in debt to touch it. uh, but they're like, you have to go to California. I was like, fuck, I'll figure that out. um, During that moment, I was constantly saying we should put our stuff on YouTube. Like we're making a bunch of short films for school, and everyone's like, "No, Vimeo's where it's at." I was like, "Ask your parents how to spell Vimeo." um, I never jumped into being like a YouTube creator, even though I had like the mindset like YouTube was where we needed to go.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like there's something like I feel like it's a problem. I think there's something wrong with me where it's like I see where good ideas are and where they're going, but I can never be the one who does it myself, whether it's a fear thing, confidence thing, or whatever. And that's hindered me. But it's also in a weird way, it has helped because where with the Corridor Digital, when I came out to LA eventually, I met them. I hung out with my friend Spencer, who works with them, and he recommended me to work on some of their stuff for free, and I did. I got fired because I was gone too long, and then they hired me.
Yeah.
um, and then I just proved myself. It's like I'm not the guy who can always get in front of camera and do stuff, even though I'm working on that now.
Yeah.
But I was the guy who was able to chug on the stuff that you don't want to chug on. And they're like, keep him.
Yeah. He's an editing
uh,
master. Throw him in front of the computer.
then yeah. And we eventually like they only had the budget to pay me for 1 day of post production and 1 day of filming. So I had to make a whole video in a essentially a day
Oh my god.
and then figure out something else to do for the rest of the month. This is just after film school. So like this is success to me.
Yeah, sure.
Uh
You made it.
and and vlogs were Casey Neistat had started coming out with his vlogs and everyone's like pulling off the classic Hollywood commercial move. It's like that's working. We should all do that. And Corridor was like, we should try to do that, but we don't know how that would work because vlogs were selfie.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it could just be BTS, you know, BTS of the company. So we tried it and we did every other day for 4 years. We started with 2 minute long videos to 5 to 10 minute. Deadlines did not change. They quickly put me on a bigger salary and got me an assistant.
Nice, nice. So like Corridor Digital, they're a weird thing because like I don't watch Corridor Digital. Not that I have anything against it. It just never really clicked with me. Um, my employee and friend and her husband are like Corridor Digital like freaks. Like they, anytime she talks about YouTube, she's talking about a Corridor Digital video, and I started realizing that like over the past couple years, uh, specifically your work in like the vlogs and stuff like that has like made it it's helped shift the course of YouTube in a way that like things like Chris Ramsey has a place now, a weird Canadian magician, and he talks about his, puzzles and stuff. And I like things that couldn't have had a place now do. And then you see things, and continued success in like things like Worm Life for like Wormwood Gaming. Like I think that all kind of stems from that like initial push of saying this is something special. People want to know us as humans more than just the content that we put out, and showing the behind the scenes stuff and like the Dickensian aspect of a company seemed to be something that like the entire internet kind of rallied around, which for that, like, thank you for being a part of that, because I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing without that sort of like, oh, people just want to know people. Like, it's not the actual
Yeah.
like we could get crunchy about shit and like 10 people would love it, but everybody wants to hear about your Yu-Gi-Oh discs again, like that, like that's the
Yeah.
type of stuff.
You gotta also remember, like, in hindsight, looking back, like, who are all the other people doing the similar things in random other corners?
Yeah.
Like, Critical Role slowly coming up on the Twitch part,
Right.
Joe Rogan's slowly coming up in the podcast, and we're revealing to the world with all these different pillars, different ways on how to share, in a very long form kind of way. Um, Man, but I gotta tell you, like, making a vlog every other day and trying to beat out perfectionism is incredible.
Yeah, right.
Like, this has got to be perfect. What are you talking about? We have to make another one in 24 hours. Like, it's done.
Yeah. Well, and like I think that like that is a thing that YouTube has proven, that perfectionism, while shooting for a level of quality is great, like when you hear echoey roomed podcast bullshit with 750,000 views on it because the person is interesting behind the camera, it makes you realize that like all of your effort doesn't really matter.
Yeah. No, it's it's such a incredible balance. Like, there's also the thing that I learned when I started Fables, um, which was, oh, the expectation of people when it comes to a specific genre or type of content, um, the audience determines what's good or bad, right? You don't.
Right.
You never get to control that.
Right.
And their determination, like, of what is good or bad is based off what they've seen in that genre.
Right.
So if you're on Twitch making D&D content, you are likely being compared to everyone else, if not the best on the platform.
Yeah.
Not because you should be better, but because, like, that's what. Okay, so if I know D&D content, this is all I know. So why aren't you doing the same thing or better than them?
Right. Matt
Um,
Mercer is a wonderful gift to this creative hobby and just nerddom in general. But he also, like, and I've heard this, and people like Dungeon Craft has done videos about it, and Seth Skorowski has done videos about it, like the Matt Mercer effect of like, aren't all things nerdy as good as him? Like, it sets like a completely unrealistic expectation of what your content should be.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then I sometimes get swooped up into it too. Um as a way to judge myself
Yeah.
and my content, and it's like, get out of here. Sometimes it's good. Like it's it's like what a rabbit hole this could go into. Uh it's like I constantly have been talking about shame a lot.
Yeah.
And it all started most randomly by listening to the audiobook of Dan Crenshaw.
I don't
the
know Dan Crenshaw. Who is Dan Crenshaw?
He's the Texas senator.
Okay.
uh both I was like, "Oh, I'll listen to your audiobook to kind of gauge where you are as a person, as a senator and stuff."
Right.
I didn't make it all the way through. I'm not gonna lie. He's a very different person than me. Uh, but the thing that resonated with me was his conversation about shame.
Sure.
Shame, like boredom, is an important emotion. Like we constantly talk about screen time and rest versus overworking and how like you need to sit in your boredom and relax. Shame is I've come to the conclusion is just as important based off what he said. It's like you need to feel shame once in a while.
Sure.
You need to feel shameful that you left the shopping cart out and got in the way of someone parking their car. You know, shame is kind of like a compass of morality. And I, since thinking about that, I've noticed that like a lot of people try to push shame away. And it's like, no, shame, I think shame, we've come to the point where we talk about shame as a negative thing,
Sure.
whereas it was never taught to a lot of people that it's supposed to be a good thing that leads to motivation. Don't sit in shame, don't force shame upon people because that's harmful.
Yeah.
Uh, but shame is a notifier, like a red flag in your brain that you need to do better.
Right. Right.
And I
Absolutely.
thought that was and that's I think to tie that into the Matt Mercer effect is often when making D&D content, you'll have that feeling like, "Man, I could do a lot better than this." And it's and you might start thinking about Critical Role, you might start thinking of Dimension 20, which is fucking amazing. Uh, and it's like you're comparing yourself and you're shaming yourself, but it's like if you genuinely believe you can do better, okay, prove it. Do
Right.
better. Work your butt off and do better.
And shame also allows for the redemption arc. Like we all need to learn from our lessons and grow as human beings. And not saying that like the initial everybody needs to be called out and feel bad for every little thing that they've ever done in their life, especially living in public like this. Like even the most innocuous things can affect you in very weird ways. um like there's something to be said about understanding that there is a hurdle that needs to be you know like climbed, and being able to look at your accomplishment afterwards and being able to show that to people. I think people love that aspect of the creative culture right now, is the this is what it was, this is what it is, look at this art, look at who we are in the
Yeah.
retrospective aspect of content creation.
Yeah, like it two parts of that. It's like to bring it back to sports is we don't how important baseball is to general society. We don't teach enough people the three strike system. Like assume that they know they did something wrong,
Yeah.
give them three strikes, and then call them each time you're gonna call them out just a little bit more. The first time, like whoa, whoa, whoa. Second time, mention something. Third time is like, hey dude, stop what you're doing. You're being destructive. Get out.
Right, right, absolutely.
um, and then it's also like it. Man, I've gone down so many rabbit holes in like studying like storytelling, advertisement, and all that stuff when working on the blogs. Um, the more people are interested, less people are interested in listening to a professional talking about how they became a professional, even though there is a market for that, and sometimes that's interesting.
Sure.
More people are interested in watching someone go from zero to hero
Yeah.
as they're doing it. Um, that's very interesting. Like that's what people prefer. People want to like hang on to the ride. They don't know where it's going, but they it's like they're on the red horse. Like I'm going for this one.
Yeah, yeah. It's I love watching people grow, and that's been one of the coolest aspects of this channel. And like only having under a year of doing YouTube and podcasts in this realm of the creative space has shown me a lot of things, and like in really short periods of time, people can go from nothing to a lot, and people can go from a lot to nothing like that. Like things happen really quickly, and none of it really seems to make any sense to anybody. And that's something that's really hard to explain to people getting into it. Like, I encourage everybody. I like the rising tide will raise all ships, but you need to understand that if you don't hit that initial goal within the first month of running out, that isn't an anomaly. That is the rule. And in
Yeah,
6 months you may still not be there.
it's there are going to be people who dislike what I'm about to say, but it's like in life there are no fifth place trophies.
Yeah.
And when it comes to making content, being an artist, being a creator, influencer, whatever the term, there's no second place trophy.
Right.
Like that raising tide is actually a kraken that's just coming to the surface to see what's going on, and then
Just
it'll go back down.
yeah, ready, like, oh, you
And if
didn't
you're in
make
the
it,
wrong
you're out.
spot, it's just a
No, dude, I know that, and like the algorithm will remind you of that. Like anytime you think that you've got a little bit of momentum, and the second you lose that speed, the void is back, and it has swallowed you whole, and
yeah.
you're instantly hidden again.
Honestly, the the algorithm has adapted and changed a lot. But I remember this when working with Nico. We were just sitting there for an hour talking about how to optimize our thumbnails, how to perfect thumbnails. What are the colors that people's eyes are drawn to specifically? How do we fix this? How do we do that? And it was just out of nowhere. We're just like, listen, all this algorithm numbers aside, at the end of the day, a computer is not watching the content.
Right.
A person is. So if it does not, if if we're spending more time on the algorithm, then we're losing our empathy. So what I decided to do was, in a very rabbit hole like decision, was just dedicate time to dive into broad strokes of how the algorithm and the machine works in general, right?
Right.
And then spend the majority of my time focused on just what is the experience from click on to click away for an audience member.
Sure.
Um, and when you use post production, it's far easier. um, when you play D&D content and you don't edit it, it is far harder.
Yeah.
Um, and when we started Fables, the idea was to like, oh, we'll get to live streaming because I'm burnt out from editing a vlog every other day
Yeah.
for
Of
5
course.
years, right? It's like I just want to sit down, play D&D, and it streams and I'm done.
Yeah.
Um, hey, guess what? That's ambitious. Like just saying that's ambitious. Like you need a camera on your DM, a camera on all the players, camera on the table. You can't just say things apparently. um, and and then you need good looking minis when it's like, do you? Nope, apparently so. Um, and only 10% of your audience is going to care about the story, while the other 90% are going to care about the spectacle,
Yeah.
which sucks. It goes against everything Aristotle has ever said. Uh,
So when you left
but
Corridor Crew to do Fables, did you instantly jump into Fables of Refuge full time? I think we should like I don't know if we've
no.
said your name of your channel in full like Fables of Refuge.
So
Go look
when
at it on Twitch and YouTube, please. It is very good content.
Thank you. So no, I left Corridor because of my mental health, of just being burnt out, and I
Sure.
and I lost like my path. Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Um, Wheezy Waiter, if anyone knows who Wheezy Waiter is,
Love me
has
some
talked
wheezing.
about he's talked about his problem with burnout, and I think he has the best solution. Is you lose your way, you lose your mission goal, right?
Mm,
For any military vets out there, that's a term to be remembered. Um, why am I making this content? Am I making this content to have fun? Am I making this content to get to a million? Like, Wheezy Waiter switched his goal to, like, I'm making content to learn something new every time I make a video.
right.
All right. And that prevents burnout, because burnout is simply you achieving your goal, whether you knew it or not, and then you're lost in the wasteland.
Yeah.
Um, so I was in that place, and there was a lot of like, is the company going to move to a different state or something? And I was like, I don't know if with my state of mind, like, is that the right move for me or stuff? So I decided to leave.
Sure.
I gave gra- graciously, I gave the company a 6 month notice.
Dude, that's incredible.
Giving them time, because I'm making so much content, and the company's business model had shifted onto my channel, my corner of the business,
Yeah.
so much that, like, I knew if I left, I would screw over a bunch of friends.
Yeah, of course.
Um, which doesn't make it easier to leave. And I was like, I just need to figure my stuff out. Need to freelance. I want to help other creators. And like, I've met so many people through Corridor. Like, there has to be a way for me to just float around and somehow figure this out. No savings while thinking this. Um, um, and I get out. I help out Indie Mogul for a bit, and that didn't turn out to be the right fit. And I just wanted to freelance, and I was doing Fables as a side because D&D had come into my life. I want to say 2016
Mm-hmm.
fully. Like, originally, I started playing with my friend Spencer. We had some off end games in 3.5 where I played a tiefling bard that had the papers to prove whatever I disguise myself as is official. So I would constantly turn myself into a boulder and put the papers on top of it and be like,
Official boulder.
the undead dragon had to believe it. uh, and and then it evolved into me playing with Jarrett, our current DM on Fables of Refuge, on at our home game, and my heart felt like it was walking through the gates through the Renaissance Festival as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that like, you gotta get that last bit of air before you go through time.
Yeah.
And that feeling came back as an adult, and I was like, I need to box this and sell it. No, I need to uh, I need to protect this and make sure it brings back a part of me that it does feel like I lost, and maybe find a new road.
Sure.
So when leaving Corridor, it's like I wanted everyone who enjoyed me as a personality to come to Fables of Refuge, because that's where I'm going to be. It's going to be a hobby that, ideally it does grow into something more. If it doesn't, I'll figure something else out, but I want Fables to be an outlet for my passion. Um, and you know, you start realizing, oh, you need 4 cameras, 6 microphones. You need a way to record all these separately. Um, I borrowed 99% of equipment right away on the first few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly, like working stupid hours trying to get rid of the borrowing because I had to go 50 miles a month just to get the equipment and then give it back.
Uh-huh.
Even though it was just a friend lending it to me, it's so far away and I don't own a car.
I mean,
Um,
that's LA, right? I mean, like,
then
a lot of people don't.
that's LA. Um, then there was a lot of people upset when I made the shift over. They were like, "Why aren't you Carmichael in front of the camera?" I gotta I'm a filmmaker too. I gotta operate all this stuff. Um, and it was funny. It's like I had come to the point. It was like Thanksgiving last year that I had no job. I had 2 months of rent. That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe one and a half. And because we couldn't live stream yet because I didn't have the hardware, I was poorly going through post production, just trying to make it look like what it's supposed to when I live stream to set the expectation versus lean into my skill set and make just badass videos.
Yeah.
And and it was also, like I was saying, my mental health. I didn't want to do that stuff
Yeah.
right now. But man, Codex and Adobe Premiere suck. Uh, it took 7 days to just put an episode together.
Well, that's too long. Especially with as like
That's too long.
fast as this has to be. I mean, yeah, that's rough.
We were releasing once a month.
Well, you were
Talk about a
doing
killer.
you were doing 3 hour episodes once a month. Is that what you started off doing? Okay.
Yeah, and then when right when COVID hit properly, at least in LA, I had figured out how to let the cameras just run on their own, how to let the audio equipment run on its own,
Yeah.
so I could come in and play. And we were going to have me and Jake Roper from Vsauce 3 come in, and we would have just this big episode that a lot of the hardcore fans from Corda would love, and Jake would help promote. COVID hit, didn't happen.
Yeah, of course.
And during that, I was like, well, let's switch to Zoom and we can live stream because it's all on the computer anyway.
Yeah.
And then that was its own issues. Like there were so many technical issues going through that.
Dude, Zoom is a
Um,
nightmare. It has so many audio glitches for me, and I don't know why. There's something about my Focusrite that it hates, and like it just garbles the audio. You're like, oh, thanks, dickhead. That's awesome.
yeah. I the hardest part is Zoom. I wish you could turn off the don't talk over each other software.
I think you can now. Like it's a feature now where you can like turn off all of the advanced features and just have it be raw
That would
audio and it'll capture all of your things individually. Like there's so many perks to using it, but also like it's got some issues.
yeah, like COVID was their ultimate beta test.
Dude,
um
yeah.
the like that's I because we played now for this entire lockdown over Zoom, and that's where I'm starting as a DM is over Zoom. And a lot of my like, how do I fix this as a DM kind of thinking is half technical because it's like, how do I prevent everyone talking over each other versus just raising hands? How do I make it feel like it's still fun in the game? And like me and a friend who also started on Zoom, we were talking about how like, hey, when we start doing marching order, that's going to be like role play initiative kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, like we can't have chaos as much as we could on the table. And Fable, like what was amazing, like I had so many ideas for Fables, and I have new ideas for Fables on top of that. And I don't know if that's because we've been stuck in the pandemic or like need to mix it up, or it might be budgetary reasons. Like
Sure.
I looked at how much it would cost to make this thing fully functional, and I was like, hey, that's more than I make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do I scale back to more manageable ideas? But yeah, we all committed to doing a campaign for I think 3 years. So we're
Wow.
just like well, that's the gaming that Jarrett and I know. Like we're not heavy on one shots. Um, so we just like let's just do it, and it's a weekly thing. This month we had to take a break because I had to work a lot. um, yeah, gosh, I have I had so many ideas for Fables on a technical filmmaking aspect that sadly because of COVID, like I get the opportunity to think about those ideas, but also not uh, realize them.
Sure.
And so Corridor called. No, I've made like clients as an independent filmmaker leading up to this, so I've been able to cover myself.
Good,
I'm
good.
not in that dark place anymore. Corridor called and they wanted me to work on some of their private website content. One being they're bringing back their D&D stuff,
Right. And this is their new
and
initiative that they're doing right now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
um, I'm doing their functional filmmaking, which is just an educational, like masterclass kind of style show. Um, and then we're doing Son of a Dungeon. And the idea for Son of a Dungeon, what Sam, who's the DM of that show, his creative idea for the show is no miniature photography at all. Instead, use Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, green screen, and a beta iPhone software that saves the iPhone positioning as After Effects tracking data to go into the game. So he'll photo scan all the minis that he has, and we get to like jump in with the players, and they're like in costume and stuff.
Sure.
And my thought was like, cool. So the tabletop aspect, I'm just going to make it what I think the best version of Fables could be. And they were like, cool, do it. Great. I'm doing it.
I have
I'm
the
playing
budget. I
with
can do
RGB
this.
lights. uh RGB lights, we're probably going to have to build a huge table. Um Dice cams, all that stuff. And yeah, it's crazy. Like I don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't leave Corridor and try it myself.
Sure.
Because just doing that allowed them to call me back and say, "Hey, can you make this show for us? Because clearly you're interested in that, and you've put more hours into that community and that I think community is the right word. That community to understand how to do this better."
Sure. Is there any part of you that's a little like jealous and or frustrated that like you couldn't have done that on your own terms? Like are you just like one of those people that is like forever optimistic and thrilled to be doing filmmaking in whatever
50-50. It comes first as like "Son of a bitch,"
yeah,
and then
sure.
it passes by, and you're like, "Hey, life's pretty good."
Right? It's pretty awesome.
I seem to have that initial reaction of just like, man, hindsight, man, this sucks, and then it's like, well,
You gotta love it.
man, But I try to go like I'm not a coffee cherry picker on the side of a mountain making $5 a day.
Right.
Like I'm fortunate, I'm privileged, I'm lucky. Um, Problems are problems, but sometimes you just got to sit back and go, "Yep, I'm doing well. I got a roof. I'm happy. I'm playing D&D often,
Yeah.
and I'm paying my bills."
And that's amazing. So are not only are you filming this thing and doing the the editing of this corridor digital project, are you actually playing D&D in that game as well?
No, for two reasons. One, they they still need to catch up to the idea that I don't need to be in the same room as equipment anymore because I figured that out. Um, like I could just turn it on and walk away.
Nice.
And the other reason is because of lockdown, they're in their own bubble, so they're comfortable with taking off their masks on camera. I'm not there yet, and because I'm still coming in and out of their bubble.
Yeah, sure. Dude, and I'm going to say it right now, this whole bubble idea is fucking bullshit. We're all going to get it and it's scary as fuck. Like I've had so
Yeah,
many close calls within the last like St. Louis is a like cesspool of COVID right now. It's bad. You know, it's like I'm walking through a swamp and a poisonous rat is spitting at me all the time. Like and I'm just
yeah,
rolling dex saves all day long. I'm like, "Yep, I'm I'm safe right now."
good.
But uh it's like
Yeah,
in the last month we've had two scares, and it's like,
yeah.
oh,
We've
that's
had
that's not that's too many.
we had one scare just the other week, and like I'm upset that one person decided to go outside their bubble.
Right.
And it's like I get tested weekly. Thankfully, the state covers it, so I can do it for free.
Nice.
Um, but I get tested weekly, take vitamins every day, well, nearly every day, at least the days that I get out of the house. Um,
Kicked your hardcore
and
drug habits. You're no longer drinking to excess all day long.
I mean, I've started drinking more, so I have to amp up the vitamins. It's like, no, you could just kick the drinking. Like, no, no.
How do you handle the stress?
Um, and that like I can't afford to get sick. Like I have 3 clients at any given time, plus I'm trying to keep Fables going. Like if I can't play, because now with over Zoom I'm playing, right?
Right.
But like if I can't play, I'm also the tech guy. So if I can't play, no one can play.
Right.
Um, I'm also the cleric.
And they need that. It's important.
They need that. Because the moment I joined as the cleric, the DM stopped handing out potions. And we haven't been to a town in a long time.
so, so
um,
one of the things that I'm realizing right now, and it's something that I keep on trying to tell people, like, if you want to make it in content creation, you can't just do YouTube, can't just do Twitch, can't just do Instagram. Literally have to do everything, and some things you can like let slack, but you have to
like
be
typos.
like typos. Yeah.
Just let them happen.
Yeah, they're there. People make fun of them. It's interaction. It helps the algorithm. you know.
Yep.
Um, but like, there's so many people who are afraid of doing the live stream thing, and I really bounce off of live D&D. Mainly because it makes me feel like I want to play it. Then I get frustrated. Then I get depressed that I can't play it, and so I have this weird like every time I catch someone, I'm thrilled to see that they're having fun with it, but I'm also find myself like just being frustrated with the way that I kind of am in a lot of things right now, just because it isn't my preferred interaction anymore, because of COVID. But the live stream seems to be the place where I think the most growth is happening, And you do your live streams solely on Twitch? Do you multi-stream? Do you do anything like that? Have you considered doing anything like that?
Uh, the flicker almost came back. I'm gonna step away from the table. Um, the yeah. So the trouble, the difficult thought, right, is when doing D&D content or tabletop content or just making content with other people.
Yeah.
Um, though you may be like the leader of the group, uh, like you run the channel, you're doing all the technical work. When it comes to make changing like workflows, you have to have everyone on the same page, and that makes things slower for good reasons.
Sure.
Um, So keep that in mind if you're making content. Like if you're making content with other people, they need to be on the same page as you, or else they'll be like, "Wait, what changed? What's going on?"
Right.
Um, streaming. We tried streaming on YouTube for a hot second, then tried to stream on both. Computer did not like that, so I got a new
Okay.
computer. Uh, um, then we did Twitch, and the reason I picked Twitch is because the community on Twitch specifically is more forgiving for non-edited content, right?
Okay.
Um, would I stream on YouTube? I don't know. Um, YouTube's going to get a lot more into streaming soon, and I think if you if you stream to both platforms at the same time, it has to be a niche thing, like charity for charity purposes. Stream to as many channels as possible.
Right.
Uh, D&D, it's weird because you have to start thinking like a business model. Like you need to be double dipping in different platforms.
Yeah.
You need multiple rivers to grow a garden kind of philosophy. Um, so YouTube has premieres, which it kind of balances both things. YouTube audience generally as it is, as we know how YouTube audience works, is they generally like edited content or pre-recorded content.
Yeah.
Um, but premieres kind of ride the line, whereas like it's that content, but I also get a little bit of a community reaction in that live stream
Yeah.
or that live chat. I mean, um, so we used to do that when we uploaded on Fables, is to kind of get that live chat, and it's having a live chat is so great, and it's even better when you, the creator, can interact with it and not like slow down the content by like, so what are you guys all saying in the chat?
Right. Well, that was what I was going to ask because, like, to me, Twitch, like, the community's already so active on chat and they love their emotes and bullshit and gifs and, like, subs. And, you know, that, like, that is the way Twitch is built. It is built for, like, my wife calls it, you know, YouTube can be public access TV depending on how the content is presented. Twitch is public access TV. Like I have a
Yeah.
friend who does like goth dance nights and she sits there in front of her
Mhm.
DJ thing and she does this thing and she puts echo on everything and she's got the psychedelic camera and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening here and why have I watched this for 2 hours? Like and that's
Right?
the way Twitch can be, and the community is like so open to that. But I think Twitch is having like a real identity crisis right now as like they can't get their DMCA stuff under wraps. It just keeps on coming back and the reasons that it keeps on coming back are completely insidious, with like leaving the back door wide open for anybody to go and download any of your VODs,
It's
any of your deleted content stored on a public server is fucking terrifying. And then, you know, like the the exclusivity aspect of being an affiliate sucks because like you can get your channel banned by trying to grow your channel using other
Yep.
avenues. So like there's this weird juggle happening right now on Twitch, and I'm trying to decide if it's worth the effort to keep the affiliate program, and because like the 30 people that watch me paint minis will fucking watch me on YouTube, like,
Yeah.
and I have a much bigger subscriber base on YouTube. So maybe if I have a set show every Sunday, maybe I'll get more people over there too. Um, it's just weird to think about like Twitch at the beginning of quarantine was like the religion, and now I feel like
It's
I've
gotten too
seen.
much attention.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that it did, because if we didn't understand why it's having the problems that it's had right now, and because I listen to copywritten music on there all the time. Now I don't, because like I now understand really truly how bad it is. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll dodge the bullet, but if they don't fix it, eventually they'll come for me. It eventually will
Yeah, like
happen.
Epidemic Sound is solid. Um, Stream Beats is also really good.
I just make my own
Um,
music. I mean, like, I'm one of those
and make your own
dickheads.
music.
Yeah.
No, we have a composer for Fables.
Nice.
Man, that's an interesting thing to think about. How do you compose music for D&D and
Right?
not make it overwhelming?
Yeah.
And the theory was make a library. So it's like a library for main themes, a library for dungeon crawling, a main theme, a little group of or album. Let's
Yeah.
say albums. So you have a main theme album, a combat album, a dungeon crawl album, and so on and so forth. And you just loop that stuff, and the it's like in I think Nerdwriter broke it down in Game of Thrones during the Battle of the Bastards, where the director knew what the audience was expecting because of so much of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So he broke those expectations to heighten the drama. For example, every time when he wanted you to believe that Jon Snow was going to die in the battle, he would play the song that Game of Thrones religiously used when any character had died in the previous episodes.
Right. Right.
And you'd be triggered. You'd be like, he's going to die. Yeah, you believe that because set it up and I'm going to knock it down.
Of course.
Um, so that's how powerful music is. Like, so when you hear small monster battle music, you're like, oh, they're fighting small creatures or muscle monsters. Okay, if you stick around and if we're good at reusing it,
Yeah.
unless if we're schmuck, like each is going to feel somewhere on a scale of difficulty or location. Like, oh, this is on the sea battle. Like, we mix that up. And I try to tell anyone who makes a YouTube channel is like, find a select library of music that you're going to reuse, whether it's from Epidemic Sound or from this library, not sponsored from Epidemic Sound, uh, or make your own music. Like have a select library that you're just going to keep reusing
Yeah.
because that's kind of like a part of the personality of your content, right?
Yeah.
Like that same music coming back.
Well, so that's something that I think is. I'm glad that you are really, and it's the filmmaker. You think about that shit. As a composer, I think about that shit. So many people like they don't understand what they're listening to and why it affects them emotionally. And I think some people don't even actually hear music as music. It is just like information that they don't know how to like properly process. And so like it's so
Mhm.
weird to think that like it isn't your good camera that makes Twitch work for you. It's a nice microphone. The thing that like people, because like if you are like daydreaming out, you don't want to hear you want to hear people actually sounding clear, crisp. And then you can look over, because like live content, anything can make your stream look bad.
It, I mean, yeah, it's going to be inevitable.
Yeah.
I like I had this epiphany, and I'm gonna try to test it on Son of a Dungeon. Because I like it. I stumbled on one of Matt Colville's live streams maybe a month ago,
Hmm.
and his live stream was simply the teleprompters in the corner with another camera shooting that,
Yeah.
and he's just streaming him shooting. So it's an uncut experience. And I think that is an interesting market. I'm going to try that on Son of a Dungeon is for the websiters live stream the uncut experience of the guys playing D&D for, 4 hours for the day.
Of course.
And then the final product is going to be a heightened, designed, edited experience. Um, so there are going to be things that cut, and there's going to be things that are emphasized because we're shooting 4K. I'm able to get that close up.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge.
Um,
I would love. I'm way more into the behind the scenes aspect of stuff than I am the actual stuff anymore. Like I'm like thrilled about that.
I mean, yeah, as a kid, um, I mean, I forget the movie. It's like Full Moon. It's a werewolf movie where a dude gets bit by a werewolf in the beginning, and then he lives in a trailer in his sister's house. And it's super old, 1991.
Oh,
Um,
it sounds good. I
it
like
was
movies like that.
it was my very first movie. My dad almost regrets it. um, and we were watching it, and there was a moment when he's like mid transformation, and the sister's like, "You got what are you doing?" It turns, and he's like in the demon voice, "Die! I'm gonna kill you!" And I cry. Like I'm terrified by this as a
Right.
child.
Of course.
And my dad had to pause it. He had to try to comfort me. It's like it's just a movie. He starts describing what movies are to me. Um, and because he worked at Blockbuster, he quickly ran to Blockbuster, got a VHS of the behind the scenes of it. Don't know why they released a behind the scenes to a B horror movie on VHS, but holy crap, they were ahead of their game.
Way ahead.
Uh, he puts it in, and I could not take my eyes off the screen. He constantly talks about how that's when he knew pretty much what I was going to be doing. Like, this is how they made the thing that made me cry. What is this? What is, ever since my dad talks about how annoying it is that I have to often watch the behind the scenes of a movie more than the movie, sometimes before the movie even made.
Sure.
Um, Made before it's watched.
I knew what you
What's
meant.
word?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there's an experience of watching something uncut, especially like a tabletop game where you can choose to watch it now live, and they're gonna mess up, they're gonna linger, they're gonna do the crunching, they're gonna do the math, you're gonna get all that,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be moments where like the DM's gonna go, "What's going on? What were you guys doing?"
Yeah.
I was prepping something.
Right. Right.
um, uh, and then there's gonna be the edited design version, which is meant for you to just go in and experience the intended story.
Sure.
Um, and Fables of Refuge and Fables, I love that it's a combination of both passions of like filmmaking. How do I make the best out of this genre? Because I honestly believe tabletop gaming. One, I was having this epiphany while watching uh, Acquisitions Incorporated, Critical Role, Dimension 20, and then especially when Undeadwood dropped on Critical Role. Um, the choice to go cinematic with it. I honestly believe tabletop content, if it's handled with enough care by the right filmmakers involved, it's going to replace soap operas. It's going to replace dramatic television and dramatic play because it's the perfect place for an actor to go.
Sure.
And you get when like Undeadwood I is the first time in a long time that I've personally experienced sitting in an actor's close up for more than 3 seconds, you know? And you watch that actor process information as the character.
Yeah.
And that is so it's so juicy. It's so like it's so not Michael Bay.
Well, and like I
um
think that you nailed it with the idea of soap opera. I mean, like, and I think that that's a lot of really what YouTube is, and and just like the direct to consumer content is, in that same sort of vein as like the drama is so much more intense, and you get to believe the characters on the other end of the screen are who they are. And so far I haven't had anybody not be who they say they were, but there's always like the fear that you're like, is this person really as cool as I think they are? And
my name is actually Bob Big Pants.
Bob Big Pants, Carmichael, what?
What if
Something
I do
that
that
I
for
really
you?
like about the D&D culture right now also is the independent homebrew D&D scene, the OSR scene.
Yes.
I think that that is, for me, where my heart lies, is because it's so punk rock, it's so visceral, it's so like do it on the fly, typos and everything, completely unbalanced, total party kills will happen, and actually, and sometimes they're designed to happen often. um and and I love the idea that people are taking their ideas, making content for people, and then selling it for like 10-15 bucks. Is that anything that you've ever considered for Fables? Because if you've got a 3-year campaign planned, that means that like you and your DMs have worked on some shit and could have something that other people might want to play in. Like you've created a sandbox that can go places.
Right. So create when making D&D content, um, to kind of like lead into that answer, um, there are two masterminds at all time. There is the creative director and the technical director,
Yeah.
right? It's extremely difficult to be both. It's doable, but usually it's two people. Jarrett for Fables of Refuge is dungeon master. He is the creative director and force behind it. Um, he built Refuge as a world and a campaign setting. He built the lore, um, and uh, he put into his fantasy the ideas that he wants to see in real life. So he's like, in this world, all the races exist. Doesn't mean there's not racism or prejudice,
Right.
but like everyone's in, you know? And then he's like, why is that? Why is that a different thing? You know? Because Gary making D&D originally, the reason why he put I'm watching Matt Colville's like history D&D episodes,
Mm-hmm.
so great. Learning how it used to function to now is an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Um, it's like you originally the reason why dwarves and elves were classes and that weird limitation stuff was trying to set both player and campaign setting in the same spot where it's like there's not many of them,
Yeah.
so don't worry about
Yeah.
that. Whereas once you separate the two, players and DM, it's a different thing. um Home brewery, Jarrett plays with home brews a lot, but he tries to make it fun for the player. Like we learned don't do this at first level. We learned maybe third is the best spot to do this. Is big hits and full heals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like your critical hit isn't double your dice damage. Critical hit is your max damage plus your roll.
Uh-huh.
And because it's so devastating, both NPCs and players can do that. When you healing, you don't roll. You get the maximum of what you could get on the heal because you could get hit so hard rolling a shitty potion heal. is going to just not feel fun.
Yeah, of course.
But then there's also that is the experience of get out of here, you this green glitchy.
Dude, it,
I'm
it
so
it it
sorry.
did some really funny stuff a couple seconds ago, and I was just like, "Oh boy."
I'm so I'm recording my audio too, so if it's messing up my audio on your end, you'll have a clean one from me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Um,
that.
uh, retract back. So homebrews.
Yes, yes. Shitty potion rolls.
um,
Yeah,
yes. So Jarrett Jarrett's game is very much he has a master world, a master story. He tries not to railroad us. He likes the sandbox,
yeah,
and he likes to kind of like prep last minute to kind of just give us a simple experience each time.
sure.
We've also learned as players that we need to bring our own story to the table more so. Like we can't have a whole episode leaning on the DM.
Yeah,
Like the DM can't be prepping the whole episode. Like we need to find something and do something. Like in our side quest while we were sailing, we all got drunk on the sea, and that ate up more than half an episode. And
just,
we were just playing King's Cup.
yeah. Just
That's all we were doing.
wasting time.
And Jarrett just got to sit back and go, "This is amazing." The live chat enjoyed it more. The live chat was like, our Jarrett, the DM, is our designated driver apparently.
Yeah, yup.
um, and this is all leading. In hindsight, it's literally the calm before the storm because we were about to hit the dungeon,
Yeah,
and you can't plan that stuff. But dice and hindsight have a way of making things more interesting when you look back on tabletop stuff.
sure.
Um, Beyond that, with homebrew, Jarrett also grew up with older systems like 3.5 and Pathfinder, so he's very much still in there.
Yeah,
That's still like half in with half 5e. Where
yeah.
I spent maybe a year in Pathfinder, and I've quickly adopted 5e more.
Mm-hmm.
And 5e, how do I say this? 5e is a lot of fun because they learned how to optimize how to do stuff
Yeah,
for the player,
yeah,
but they made it more work for the DM, and it doesn't feel fun all the time to be a DM.
yeah,
Um, like me learning how to DM, I'm homebrewing personally a lot of mechanics to just make things make sense.
sure.
Um, for example, how do I run a trap in 5e? Roll a deck save. You just instantly say it.
Yeah,
Roll a deck save. Well, did I see it ahead of time? Roll perception. Like it's so messy.
yeah,
But the moment you go, once you include once you put the sticky notes up of like passive perception, you can I realize traps can have their own initiative. Like you just use passive perception as a trap initiative,
yeah.
and it's like everyone above the trap DC auto succeeds, and you just run like two skill challenges. Like first skill challenge, do you trigger it?
Right.
These people succeeded. It's up to you. And whoever failed, you roll your second skill challenge to see if you're there when the trap kills you.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that sounds cleaner for the DM.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of makes a trap feel like Indiana Jones jumping over the pit in the first movie.
Yeah. Well, and I think like old school D&D was built with like so little rules and so little guidance, and there was
So
just like
little.
just do the thing that feels good in the spot. And when and I've said this so many times before, and I've taken a lot of heat for it. Like 5e is written for people that have never done anything creative in their lives. It's like it lays it all out for you, and if you follow it, you can have a great time. But if you
Right.
like deviate, the people who aren't
It's
ready
hard.
for that are gonna feel really lost. And I am all
Yeah.
about like, dude, we're going off the dunes now. Like this dune buggy is going that way, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
crazy.
I had that experience because on Fables of Refuge, I uploaded a series of me doing a talking head, talking about like my experience playing off camera while I'm learning
hmm
and homebrew ideas that I have to kind of fix my experience and try to find
I
my
love that
style.
series, by the way. I think that that's a really good series, and there's a lot of information in there. I think I wish a lot of players and DMs would like pay a little bit of attention to.
Because I liked because when D&D was first made and there was so little rules, being a DM was far more of a craftsman,
Yeah,
and now it's far more of an assembly line, which anyone could be a DM, which is good.
yeah,
I like that there is a lower bar of entry
yes, me too.
to play the game, and but even a lot of people don't realize this is like the thing that has stayed the same across from the very first version to fifth edition, other than the word fighting, is um in the book it has always said make things up,
Right,
do something that you want to do.
right.
The book instantly does it, and I think 5e works in the first version of D&D. It said at the end of the book,
Yeah,
right? Here's an idea, do what you want.
right.
Um, in 5e, because the books are so much larger,
Yeah,
it says it like in the first 3 pages.
yeah. I think it's in
Just
the
do what you want.
introduction. Yeah,
And then it's like, now if you're not comfortable with that, or you need a little bit of help, here's a bunch of ideas.
yeah.
And I generally like that. Like over the last month, I've been making I think 5 pages of random encounter tables.
hmm
Uh, and it's like, what monsters do I toss in here? Like, I might not have the energy right now to come up with something amazing like a cloud giant riding on the back of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
right.
uh, so it's like having that default is good. It's like it's like in filmmaking, like what shot should I do for this scene? Well, as a default, basic cinematography and cinema language would recommend this. Oh, let's do that. You
Right.
do it, and then you go, this is good and clean. It does what it needs to do, but I want it to be a little bit different.
Yeah,
That that's craft. That's art.
yeah. Of course.
And I really like that. Like my encounter tables, I told Trent about them, and he's like, I need to see these because me as a player, me as a player, I'm just pure chaos. Um, because the day that I learned the right way to think of D&D as a player
hmm
changed everything, and it put Jarrett on his toes every time it's my turn.
Yeah.
Um, I think of D&D as a gambling game, but instead of money, you're gambling story.
Right. Totally.
And if it's a gambling game, let's go for the big points.
Yeah. Why not?
If I die, I die.
Yeah. Dude, same. 100%.
uh, I it's a balance in my head of like I love my character and the story that I created for him, and I can't wait to unravel it and share this idea with my friends, and often with the world with the ability to do this. Uh, but if they die, I'm taking that shit to the grave, and it's gonna be so fun.
It's so brutal when you die in an RPG on a character that you've like been crafting for forever, and it happens in like either the attrition just is too much, or it's just something like that feels like really left field, and you're just like, oh man, like I like the idea of like if you're gonna go out, it better be like big and catastrophic, and I love playing with people like that because they are so much more invested in the beat to beat engagement. And so like any new player going into it, when they have somebody who's like, I'm going to jump on the monster's back and try to stab him in the ear, and you're like, hell yeah, let's do this. That
Yes.
sort of moment of like the new player is like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, and they're like, why not?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
well, why
It
not?
rule of cool over rule of law or whatever it is,
Right,
right?
right. Have you
Um,
spent much time in other RPG systems besides Dungeons and Dragons?
I played Star Wars, the
Okay.
Star Wars one once. The biggest difference being the dice. You know, the Star Wars dice is more of like you succeed, but this kind of could happen. So figure out a story thing.
And is that
Um,
Edge of Rebellion that you're talking about?
I think so.
Okay.
Um, I didn't care for it mechanically as a
Mm-hmm.
player. Um, that might be because I like numbers. I'm used to numbers. Numbers kind of versus like saying telling me that I have to now come up with something on the fly, and that might work occasionally, but a number means it's coordinated to a mechanical choice, and that works for my brain.
Yeah.
Um, the setting of switching it up to outer space and trying to figure out how do you play in outer space, and you have lightsabers and force power. That that is I like that. So my thought being, how do you take the thing that you like about D&D, the mechanics of it,
Yeah.
and you can apply it across the board? And I think 5e is a great system for that.
Sure.
Like I tweeted the other day, I didn't expect so many people to like the tweet. Is wait, so in Star Wars, are is each planet its own terrain? You know,
Yes. Yes. I think so.
what's the difference? So what's the difference from playing in a fantasy game where you take a cart from one terrain to the next versus you got a spaceship and you go from one planet to a planet? You could play D&D in space.
Yeah.
Sh-
100%.
um,
Ha- have you seen Carbon 2185?
no,
It
tell
is
me more.
it's a cyberpunk setting, and it's built on the 5e engine. So it uses the open license,
Great.
like unabashedly 5e. But what they've done is they've built a Blade Runner esque world for you to play around in, a little less hostile than like Cyberpunk 2020, because that game, I think being the dungeon master for a cyberpunk game sounds like a fucking nightmare. Like your combat has hitboxes, and like it's way too crunchy, and it's like the min maxer's dream. I could see people like really getting into that and losing sight of just like the fun interaction. So this is a much more like baby's first cyberpunk game, but because it's built
Okay.
on the 5e engine, I'm like, this actually makes a lot of sense. And so like I have all the cyberpunk books. I don't think I'll ever run a cyberpunk game. I think I'll probably always run 2185, just because it's the rules make so much more sense, especially because 5e is so ubiquitous right now for tabletop gaming. You could actually like be like, it's just like 5e, just with guns and you know
Well,
cybernetics.
so that I've been like, it's interesting because with 5e, right? It's designed not just by saying it in the book, like do what you want.
Yeah,
It is mechanically designed to be homebrewed
yeah, 100%.
because otherwise, where's the business model of expanding and selling more books?
Yeah. But
So,
it's the most supported system as from Wizards of the Coast, though, that I think I've ever seen. It has more books and more
yeah,
stuff. It's crazy the way that they've monetized that
I
system.
it's going I don't think they're ever in the next I would be shocked if they go to 6th edition anytime, almost ever. The system would have to completely be rethought of because 5e hit when digital content hit
Right.
and it became part of the ether. So to shift to 6e makes all the other content less relevant,
Yeah. Well,
less
this
valuable.
this is what I could see them doing.
Yes.
I could see them going back and being like, BX, this is your first edition.
Yeah.
Check this out. And
I
things like that.
I'm slowly encroaching on my system kind of being a homebrew between 5e, 4e, and a little bit of like pre-advanced
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Um, like uh, I got rid of good and evil.
I think that's fair.
And like a friend says, no, good and evil is important for me as a player. I'm like, great. As a D, my PCs, I just need to know where they are on the spectrum of lawful to chaotic,
Yeah.
so I can give you what you want. Um, my encounter tables are terrain based, so I don't have to. 90% of the time, I don't need the DM book.
Yeah.
Like I just need my binder, and it's like, oh, we're in the grassy hills. Everyone roll d20 so I know what you guys are encountering. Great. D&D Beyond, just bring up those monsters to just like have a
Right.
visual.
Yeah.
Because I don't even want to look at their stat. That's way too many. I don't need to run all that stat.
No, you
So
need
I have
armor
a
class.
monster
That's
table.
it. AC.
I have a table just for monster sizes and
Uh-huh.
what the ACs and strengths are coordinated to the size.
Yeah.
And I just have that. I
Yeah.
have like I love Matt Koval's perspective of DM when he made the boss and solo monster video, which is how can you make DMing as efficient as possible so you can just focus on narrative experience.
Yeah.
So it's like what strength deck stuff. It's like I don't. Is it a small creature? Great, it's this
Yeah.
because it will convince you it's a goblin.
Yeah. Yeah. And
if
and
I
that's
it, but
that's the thing that I think a lot of, people who get too crunchy into it, like forget like you aren't supposed to spend 2 hours for every encounter. Sometimes you just need to like
no,
feel like
that's
you crushed something and move on because like that'll make when you meet the hard thing actually feel hard. If everything's hard, nobody's having fun.
right. It's contrast.
Yeah.
Contrast creates value.
100.
Um,
100.
uh, then there's like I when DMing I because I for my first DMing technically my second my very first was with my girlfriend. We're just doing one on one,
Yeah.
and I this is where I caught like, oh, I need to lock down these mechanics in my head because she was in a wizarding school and she's like how she's wandering through the wizard school. My number one advice: don't let them go to the library. Um, but what I learned was, oh, I don't know this castle or this school. So every time she walked through a doorway, I was like, now you're in this part of the top building. Now you're in this part of the building. And I just started making shit up. And I was like, man, if the right question comes my way, this all comes crumbling down. Um, but I realized like I was just making shit up on the fly and just describing what sounded cool to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I need mechanics that I understand and can memorize quickly that can back up my creativity.
Sure.
Um, so it's like when we were playing over Zoom, my DM experience of it's the starter kit. Yeah, the starter set. And we're going through that first goblin cave.
The the
I forgot goblins have bows.
yeah.
And and I didn't understand dark vision. And I was like, well, you see, you don't see this, that. And I was like, I forgot how to roll initiative correctly. Um, and we're just going by marching order, which makes sense to me. If you're being stealthy, marching order should be your initiative.
Sure.
Like the person in the back of the line shouldn't be going first.
No. No.
um, but I realized like all these goblins are just attacking, right? And after that, I was like, "Mm, I was too focused on just like where are the goblins? What are they doing? How do I make this that? Like I was trying to make each encounter in that cave a little bit different
Yeah.
of an experience, but I had no guidance for it. So it was more brain power than it needed to be.
Sure.
And so I walked away with it going, I need to find a way to organize my combat. And Dale Kingsmill, she had an idea for narrative combat where you kind of organize NPCs as classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, let me try that. And I did. I made 4 NPC classes, and your NPCs will never be anything else. And
Yeah.
you just roll a d4 to figure out what class they are when they go into battle. So it's like, are they a skirmisher? Are they a tank? Are they an archer? Are they a caster?
Yeah.
Done. And I have a whole little set for me of like, I don't need to go look up goblin because are they a skirmisher? Okay, their ACs are this, DCs are this. These are your weapon choices. Pick it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Done.
S-
Done. I don't. It's like I want goblin, and also like, what is a goblin when it doesn't have a class? Why is that a villain? Like I
Right.
want to know if it's a goblin archer, goblin bad muscle dude. Like this goblin clearly goes to the gym. This goblin doesn't. That's more interesting. Um, so when it comes to 5e, you get that hold your hand like this is a goblin, what and how you're supposed to do a goblin.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, a goblin should just be skin that is on an encounter. The players just need to know that they're fighting some type of a goblin. That's all they're going to care about.
Yeah.
The how it's built and how it works behind the screen is for you.
Yeah.
And the more organized it is for your brain, the better. Like for me now, it's like, oh, there's 7 goblins on the field for 4 players. These 3 are archers. This one is a tank. These 2 are skirmishers, which have sneak attack.
Mhm. Right.
So like, um, yeah, it's it homebrew is such a beautiful thing because you get you get to kind of like make it make sense for you. You get to make your world come reality versus not entirely of like I need to make a world to make my own world. Like no,
Yeah.
you just have to make your own like system to make your own world. You still can lean on D&D and what they have as a foundation.
Yeah.
Like I like there to be 4 different types of long rest.
Right. Have you read any of the Tales from the Loop books at all? Like super not D&D, but cool RPG nonetheless.
No,
Um
what are
they
they?
they handle like you've seen the Amazon show Tales from the Loop? Yes?
Yeah, I've seen trailers.
Dude, as a filmmaker,
I
you
don't
should
get
watch
to
that show.
everyone says these things to me, but then it's like, yes, you I between my time, I will do it.
Yes, yeah. It's a devastatingly brutal show. Like it is so sad but so beautiful at the same time. It's a really wonderful thing and it made me buy the books. And their RPG, the way they handle encounters is the game master tells like the location and then asks the players what is going on. Like it is a game of ping pong. So like a game master directs where they go, but like basically lets the player build a lot of the stuff. Like if it's completely inconsequential to what's going on, it allows the player so much more freedom to shape the world for them. So they don't feel so railroaded into a direction, even though there will be point A will need to get to point B. We all know that has to happen, but instead of the DM directing it, it just allows the players to do it. And so it's a little bit more like jazz in the fact that you're playing off of each other, which I thought was really
Hmm.
interesting and something that I've been going back to quite a bit as far as like an RPG that needs another look. Something that will make games more fun for people, because if not everybody's into it, that's my hardest part as being a DM, is because I'm kind of now the forever DM. Like, how do you make sure that everybody who's playing with you is having as much fun as you are?
Yeah, that's Jarrett very much. He's the forever DM. And it's one of the reasons why I'm DMing our home game once in a while is like he just needs to be a player.
Yeah,
He just needs to enjoy that. Um, and honestly, whenever if you're not the DM of a game, if you have the chance to be a DM once in a while, do it.
yeah,
Like give your friend a break. Um, the sad part is the moment that stress was hitting him, my character in the home game, my cowardly barbarian, was starting to hit his storyline. So it's like, well, 38 pages of a backstory. We'll see it later.
yep, yep. 3 pages of backstory. That's intense. I can't put any more than like 2 paragraphs worth of work into any of my characters, because I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to die quick, and if like if I survive, then I'll have time to mess with this. But like, this is probably not happening.
It's funny. It's like my backstories get smaller and smaller the more I play.
Yeah,
Uh, my barbarian, most of the backstory is just who is their family because I read that dwarves have big families.
yeah,
Okay, this is my mom, this is my dad, this is my uncle, this is my aunt, this is my brother, this is my sister. This is what they do because I would know what they do as a job. And then it went down to a rabbit hole of like, my brother works at a bank. Well, how to wait? If I'm 120 years old, my brother would have described the bank, and I would be familiar with the bank, especially if it's dwarfs,
yeah.
right? So I'm like, okay, Pathfinder, what's the banking system like? The one thing Pathfinder has never explained is their banking system. So I created a banking system and handed it to Jarrett, and I'm like, I'm sorry for world building, but here you
Here
go.
you go.
I needed I needed to know how the bank system worked, so I understood my character's brother, who we have never met.
He might pop up later on. You never know. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you are thinking about those things to help your DM. And like I said, I really love your DM videos. I think that they're like full of really good information, and I love the thought experiment stuff of like content creation. It's one of the reasons why I love Trent's videos so much. It's all thought experiments and like a little autobiographical. You know, like you're learning who the person is as the content gets released, and that's to me what makes this whole thing fun. So like I'm really glad that you do those, because otherwise I would be bouncing off your channel, and it sucks because I know what you're doing is good. It you can tell that there's a lot of thought and care that goes into it, and you guys are obviously having fun doing it. Like everything I've watched, but like you know as soon as I found the dungeon videos, it's like sweet, sweet. This is the content for me. I like this.
Yeah, the hard part when making those DM workshop videos is like I always have to do a retake of like if I accidentally say what you could do.
Yeah,
And it's like, no, 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 it's not a tutorial. Stop that. I'm talking about me and what I want.
yeah,
Um, it doesn't. It tries. I try to like force the narrative of it being like, this is me. This is my thought. This is about my thing. Me saying it out loud is the point of you potentially learning from it,
yeah.
not me telling you like a tutorial of what to do. Um, yeah, it's that series is fun because it's like I have this idea. If I can say it out loud and articulate it, then it resonates with me more and I can adjust it later.
Yeah, sure.
Like, how do I make hit dice more valuable?
I watched it. I watched it. It worked. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like It's a weird game. This whole idea of content creation based off of a leisure product and making the leisure product now your like job is interesting. Like it's a weird juxtaposition that we're all kind of playing in right now, and it leaves me sometimes like a little disillusioned, but also like hopeful that like there more content like this can exist. It's a really
Yeah,
fun time to be in it.
it's not going to shift to anything new dramatically. Like it's plateaued for the most part. There's going to be new ideas presented, but at the end of the day it's all going to be very similar.
Yeah.
So it's hard to stand out. Um so you kind of just got to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And it's because it's part of content creation now. The hours and time spent prepping to play D&D or any tabletop game has to become more efficient because you're also now writing a video.
Yeah.
And you don't make videos to write videos. You make videos to share experiences and ideas.
Right.
Um yeah, that it's an interesting evolution that I think tabletop gaming is about to go through,
Yeah.
which like 5e has done probably the best thing ever for D&D, which is create advantage and disadvantage as a rule to just sum shit up. Um, for players, that's great. Like, hey, narratively, this isn't your cup of tea, so you're gonna roll at disadvantage.
Yeah.
Narratively, you're gonna roll at advantage. We'll do add number stuff if we want to. Um, but the DM's gotten harder and harder, like I was saying before. So that's going to be the next, probably most important evolution of the tabletop community is making GMs and DMs do less work. As in less work, less things to look up.
Yeah.
Just come up with more shit. Write it down, and that's your default.
Yeah.
Like I think that's going to be the next big thing because when I sat down to DM, like I the amount of stuff that you have to prepare for your players is different than the amount of stuff that you have to prepare for yourself.
Right.
Um, and that's just I see that being a thing that's going to be worked on.
Yeah. I agree. And for good reason, because like yeah, it can be taxing doing the DM thing, and especially when you're just like, what the hell are we doing? You have one wild card, you have one timid person, and you have like a bunch of people wanting to play like straight up like back and forth boxing match stuff. You're just like, I don't know how to balance this for everybody and keep it fun.
I don't balance.
Right.
I don't. I really don't. I what I did is I took off modifiers for attacks and damages for all the NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whatever I roll, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then I outnumber my players.
Yeah.
And like if I feel like they're going to be killed anytime soon, two things will happen. One, the bad guys get scared away from a bigger bad guy, which is going to make the players like hide or do something,
Yeah.
right? Or hear a set like guards show up to scare the bad guys. Come up with that.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is that it's going to be TPK, and they're going to wake up that morning from a bad dream.
Yeah. They ate bad pie the
Like
night before and they all dreamt it.
checkpoint. Go back to the
Yeah.
checkpoint.
Yeah.
The game's not over.
Yeah.
You guys just that didn't turn out the way you wanted it.
Yeah. Oh, I've
Um,
definitely done that one. Like
balance. Yeah, balancing is something that just needs to not be. Balancing doesn't have to be part of the conversation.
yeah.
Another. What was it? I just thought about it was. Um, it's gone.
It's all right. It's all right. We've been talking for a lot longer than I realized. I looked over and was like, "Oh wow, We've been doing this
Oh
for almost
wow.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really glad I got to meet you and to talk with you about your career of content creation and being a part of this and seeing where you're going. I typically wrap up all these shows with the same question, um, like what what is your big, hairy, audacious goal? What is your BHAG of content creation? What do you want to be, or have you been fortunate enough to be doing exactly what you want?
I think I'm in a transition place where I'm starting to be able to work on things I want. Um, I'm able to be hired as a filmmaker to work on stories that aren't traditional, and they are more fluent and experimental and improvised, like D&D content, as well as behind the scenes vlogs for companies, like showing the the humanity behind a business, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel like modern culture a negative perspective on businesses, um, which are the things that have gotten us this far anyway.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and on the flip side, with like Fables, I'm playing games with my friends and trying to learn how to make that into content. And then I'm also learning how to do DM myself, and I have ideas on how to make that into more unique content that fits me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that transition phase where I was just working to get to a good spot, and I'm clearly in a point where it's coming.
Sure.
And as long as I keep chugging and keep working, uh, maybe I can get a nat 20.
Well, I definitely think that you're on the right path, and it's nice to know that there is such professionalism coming up from behind the scenes on this, because that's gonna have to be, there's gonna be two things that happen. It's gonna have to get more professional, or it's gonna have to get way more DIY punk rock. And like I think both things are gonna happen at the same time. You're gonna see the things like Morkborg be like, the murder hobo games where everybody just goes in, listens to heavy metal and kills shit. You're gonna see a lot more of that, and then you're going to see these like wonderfully sculpted stories and things happening inside.
I like the idea of doing both.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like I because it back to the whole, like, when I was doing a vlog, was the experience of the audience. Click in, click out. Click in, I want you to go, "Wow, this looks nice. This is fancy.
Yeah.
I'm getting some champagne." And then you pull out a cheeseburger and you just go heavy metal with it. Like, wall to the walls, anything can fucking happen.
Right.
I like that economy. It's really a fun concept to just mix it up.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? I told it's kind of like an ending kind of advice thing that I heard, that I felt about DMing from my friends. My friend Jarrett, who has been majority of the time my DM, the thing that I learned from him is being more compassionate as a person, more
Hmm.
empathetic, uh, working on my social skills. He's helped me with that. Um, and how to think of a story bigger, how to prep smaller and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, like, looking at Matt Mercer, the number one thing I take away from Matt Mercer is from a single one shot where they were doing like a PvP game, and Grog pulls out the deck of many things. And he's like, "I'm pulling out 5 of the cards." Matt Mercer's reaction was just the whole like, and
Yeah. Right.
I was like, that I need to experience that as a DM more than I don't.
Yeah.
And then watching Brennan Lee Mulligan do Dimension 20, oh man, the his ability to say yes and over no is stunning. It's
Yeah.
absolutely stunning. Um, like, "Why the fuck not? Yeah, go ahead, do that." and he'll say yes so many times to a point where the players try to overreach, and he'll go, "No, no, no, listen. I've given you a giant eagle that speaks, wears leather pants, and a fedora hat.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you this."
Yeah, yeah.
And, like, that's what I have, personally absorbed for DMing, like, I want to capture that experience, the insanity and the compassion.
Dude, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful place to end, man. I appreciate you and your efforts in this scene. I think that you're you're going to be a huge player on so many of these things, and I hope we will be singing your praises for years, even if you aren't the rock star up front. I think you are thinking about this right the way that that it should be, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything you want to promote before we wrap up here, man?
Promotion wise, if you would like to, you as in those who are watching, if you'd like to check out Fables or Fables of Refuge, they're the same thing. Fables of Refuge is the campaign that's in the channel Fables. Uh, if you'd like to check out that show, that game, if you want to check out the DM videos that I do on that channel, uh, we're on like episode 22, and most of the episodes are 3 to 4 hours long and then 2 hours long, and then we usually split the episodes up for releases to make them easier to digest. And we try to release weekly. Sometimes a month is beefy with work and schedule, but we try to stay very regular. That's pretty much what I'd like to promote.
Yeah, and you guys got a
It'd be
Patreon
nice
and everything,
to.
right?
We do have a Patreon, yeah. Um, Too humble to talk about it.
It's real weird,
So
but like that's such a cool
yeah,
place now for people to interact, and it's something that I'm realizing Patreon relationship. Don't ever take it for granted. It's so sweet.
the patrons have been great. They've supported us through COVID. Like the Patreon money, more and more the channel keeps going, the less and less investment and expenses that it needs, because I'm getting all the shit that it needs to be self-sufficient mechanically and on technology wise.
Yeah,
Um, so now more and more of the Patreon budget is going to more creative and more production based stuff, which is great. We also have a Discord uh, that we just talk about shit. We're trying to do merch, but merch is harder than people think.
it's way
Even
hard.
if you want to just do like, even if you just want to do, what is it? Just one of those merch companies where like you just put something on a shirt.
Yeah,
I mean,
Teespring.
it's harder than that.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you
hard.
want it to look good.
Yeah, dude, I just released my first shirt like a couple weeks back, and that was like I was like, this is way more effort than it should be, but also like
Right?
because it has to be right. Because if it's wrong, then it's representing your entire brand, and that sucks. you
Yeah.
know?
Like we have a beautiful, talented character artist, Ali Edwards, who helps us with our character art, and she's making chibi version of those arts for the shirts.
Nice.
But she's also dealing with having to work full time and becoming a new parent, and on top of that, COVID
Yeah.
all at once. So it's like I'm not pressuring her to do anything, and it's like, man, I still do want to have my merch release. So I'm like, like check this out. We made a poster of
Yeah.
all our character art.
And it's so good. It's great art.
Yeah, she's absolutely talented. Um, like I did not expect her to be able to make my character Julius, who is a treant cleric. Surprisingly, you can't play a treant in the official rules. So right there, the character itself is a design of homebrew.
That's awesome. Well,
But
I
yeah,
Dude,
Fables of Refuge. That's like I don't need to promote any more than that.
yeah, and you do Fables of
If you
Refuge
like it.
you do it on Sunday on Twitch, correct?
Twitch, we are so it's try to get to week because we're like we have to schedule everyone's schedule, so we can't
Yeah.
promise anything. Like on a business perspective, for anyone who's interested with this, this is the podcast shall continue. the On a business perspective, when if you think about playing D&D, right, with your friends normally, why is your D&D session so random on a schedule? It's because you can't financially entice or motivate people to have a locked schedule.
Right.
And the same thing with us, like no one's able to make money yet because we're still putting money into the channel to just make it look and sound good.
Right.
And uh and then COVID, like we don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
And it if we don't have collectively, if we could just make sure everyone has a locked schedule, such as like, oh, let's just play a bunch of episodes in a couple months and then we'll release them throughout the year. Or if you do it every week, you got to make sure there's out of all the other things that people can do throughout their week that make money,
Mhm.
this needs to compete with that, or else it's much, much harder to motivate people to do a locked schedule.
Of course, yeah.
So on Twitch, it's whatever day of the week, that's what's going to happen.
All right.
And then on YouTube, we try to split the episode in half and do Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's a really roundabout way for me to explain that.
Well, like the one thing that I think is really hard for streaming and growing and the podcast continues is the set schedule has been the one thing that has Twitch has garbage discoverability, but when I can say 12 o'clock on Sunday, I'm going to be painting minis in my attic, that is the
Yes.
thing. And then like people go from like Eeny Meeny streams at 9 to 1. I go from noon to 3, and then like I pass off to like Reiner, or like we have this like little like game that we all kind of do. That's the only way I've been able to grow people on Twitch, because I'm very consistent every Sunday. I'm doing this, and it just so happens that that's the same time that my wife has to work. So like I don't ever have to run
Convenient.
into anything weird there. And that's what I think most people don't do when treating YouTube. They're like, we're just gonna go live now, and they're like, fuck, only 3 people watched us. That was garbage, and never try it again. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of the affiliate thing through December. I'm gonna try to anyway. See, I know Twitch is really hard to respond to you, and because like I want to find a home for live streaming, but I'm not growing anymore on Twitch. So like I'm going to try to do the multi stream out through like Streamlabs or whatever, and see if I can start building an audience. And maybe that audience is more on YouTube. Who knows? If you have a set schedule that people show up, like, and you could totally do mini painting. You could totally do like D&D podcast day, so if, say that you have like a couple hours to, once a week sit down and talk with your fans and be something like that. Those little things, I think people would really eat it up, and then you could have like another angle to get people into your content, because I
Yeah.
think you have a good mind for the D&D stuff, and you could talk with people like Trent. You guys could like sit down and like talk game creation and homebrew stuff, and I think people would love that.
I it's not in front of me, but I printed out Trent's like magic senses
Uh-huh.
stuff because I like the idea, and it's a lot of more crunching and math, especially for players.
Uh-huh.
So it's like I'm looking at it. I'm trying to go, how do I incorporate this into D&D smoothly?
Yeah.
It might just be a prep thing, like when you build your magical character. Losing my words. When you build your caster, it might just be an additional thing to prep.
Right.
Like, uh, what do your spells smell like or sound like and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or it just might be a trigger for me to communicate that more efficiently. It's like, what does your spell look like? What does it smell like? Stuff like that.
Right.
Or start describing smells more often, or small visuals that spells do. Um, yeah, Trent's home brewery of making his own designed game is like infectious.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Arcane Ugly,
Um,
man. I'm into it. All of my Patreon, like I was like, hey, you guys want to do like a one shot for like Christmas or something? I can work on it all month. They're all like, can we do Arcane Ugly? And I was like, well, I have to fucking ask Trent because it's not out yet.
that would be a fun game to play. 100%.
Yeah.
The oh such a good idea. Like when we were starting Fables, I was trying to do it just for patrons. Uh, but man, setting it up and tearing it down all the time, because I live in a single studio.
Yeah.
Like I have to have a Murphy bed just to have a livable space.
Of course. Sure.
Um, to do mini painting and making sure there's top down, there's a side, and there's a me, and then the mic is good. All of that is so hard.
Very hard. Yeah.
As and it's like I'm trying to rebuild my desk system to something similar to what I showed you prior to the podcast. So that way I can just sit down, do a mini painting video for 3 hours and be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like,
Like I love
you should see
like
my setup because I'm proof positive that you can do it in 2 feet. Oh,
so you
nice.
got this guy, right? Green Dragon? Yeah, like I did this in maybe 2 hours.
Nice.
I'm very much in a similar mindset of Trent where it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
just get it
Just
done.
get it done.
You will live for a minute and you'll be dead.
The way that I look at painting now, like, because I spent all year painting for competitions, and now I'm just kind of burnt out about putting that much effort into it. Even though I have some like beautiful pieces by the end of it, like putting 40 to 60 hours into a piece to then like not be able to have it compete or take a photo good enough to win or whatever, is like it's really frustrating and demoralizing to keep on working at that level. So I made a joke on Twitch as we were listening to like 90s grunge radio on Spotify, and we were having like a conversation of who was the best grunge band of the 90s, and I was like, Nirvana may be like the clear winner, but like I think Soundgarden is, probably the best, and they're like, Alice in Chains is like, I think you're wrong. So we're having this whole argument as I'm like painting this mini like crazy. I'm like putting zero effort into the actual like, and just like stream of consciousness fighting with people over music. And by the end of it, like I had this like model that actually looked badass. It's not perfect. There's a lot of stuff that I could learn from it. And so I looked at this thing, it was like 3 hours, and I did it like to almost display quality. It's like, this is going to be called grunge painting. We're putting in zero effort. It's all attitude. It's all like bold strokes and figuring out ways to cut down on the monotony of painting to get like a higher thing. And so like I did a little video on it, and I've joked about it over and over. And now I'm at the point where like I don't want to put in any more than 3 hours to a mini. I'm like, no, I just want
Yeah.
to be done with this thing. So
When I started painting minis, it was just like, oh, what's this look like? What would this be? What would this be? And I was getting really lost in it.
sure.
And then I just started applying, color theory. Like, is this going to be monochromatic? Is this going to be dual color, tricolor, quad color? And it's like, okay, so it's going to be a tricolor thing. Okay, what are my 3 primary colors? That's it. I'm only working with those 3.
Right.
Got to make it work.
Yep.
And then the mini looks better because it looks thought out
Yeah. Well,
versus being perfect.
and using those like contrast tricks, like visually you can be sloppier, but because you have proper color combos and value in there, they just look better. And so like that's
Wow.
like a huge aspect of how I roll. I'm yeah, it's just like bands don't sit and write like the perfect song every single time. They use their, the Foo Fighters didn't get huge by crafting like the best songs. They created the most catchy rock songs, and they've used the same thing over and over and over again. So why would you not do the same thing with your art? Whether
Yeah.
it's video, whether it's painting, like why does every piece have to be this like photorealistic representation? No, play with the tricks. Andy Warhol didn't think about his art. He just did it because he knew that it looked badass. Pop art has taught me that, like, it is all about intention than actual execution.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny is like the flip side of that coin is like often people say an idea is 1%, 99% is execution.
Yeah,
But then it's also like where's the plateau of that? And from making vlogs every other day for 4 or 5 years, it's like just gotta be good enough.
yeah, yeah,
Communicate
dude. Just get it
the
in.
idea, communicate the idea quickly, put some craft into it, work, be good, like be proud of what you're doing,
Right.
and once in a while be ambitious.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
That's all life needs.
that's all it needs. That's all you need. Uh, dude. I gotta get going here. We just keep on
If
going.
you
I
gotta
could
get
talk to you for
cracking,
forever.
get it.
Um, thank you, dude. Carmichael, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. This is
Absolutely.
it's been a lot of fun, and we'll get you back on. We'll do more of this. We'll keep in touch. So I want to see where your journey goes, because it's inspiring to watch.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for the compliments. Um, yeah, I look forward to like the next stages, the next stages of the channel and next stages of what I'm doing. Um, and slowly meeting people like yourself in the community is just heartwarming. The community is so nice. The community bickers like a family, but the community is at the end of the day welcoming.
True.
And I think when I was a kid, I didn't know that, and I was intimidated by the idea of tabletop gaming. And when you actually meet the people behind it, it's well, wholesome, caring people. It's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure even if you met and hung out with the big dogs, it would be the exact same way. I'll just here because they love it.
Yeah.
Well, right
All
on,
right.
buddy. Well, thank you again. Let's catch up in a couple months and see where things have gone.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you. And for everyone watching, I'm sorry you got the longest podcast.
Oh, they love it. They're here for it. Thank you for making it through another episode of Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to continue the support in other ways, I do have a Patreon. The link is down below. Proceeds from that will go to pay for new equipment, subscription fees if I need it, and graphic design stuff. I'd like to help build this channel. So any of your support is, while never necessary, is always appreciated. If you want to see more hobby stuff, you can head on over to Twitch. I generally stream on Sundays at noon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.